Well, hello there, FC Dallas Curious fan. Welcome to another episode number
185.
185.
Hey, Peter,
185.
hold
Yeah,
on, hold on.
yep,
You
yep,
sound
yep.
like you're in a tin can. Are you on your
Oh
actual
no,
mic?
let me make sure that it hooked up to the right place. Maybe it didn't.
Does that sound better?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Woo. Ooh. Third degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. The Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.
Third Degree, the podcast, is sponsored by Soccer 90. The U.S. men's national team is set. It came out today. Oh, boy, was there some controversy. But the World Cup's about to begin, 11 days away. You're up, and come get your Soccer 90 gear. Get your U.S. Soccer national team gear, your World Cup gear. Anything you want for the national team. Don't miss the MLS end-of-season sale, which runs from now through November 13th. With MLS and FC Dallas gear marked down as much as 50% off. Shop Soccer 90 today.
Well, hello there, FC Dallas Curious fan. Welcome to another episode numbered...
185, Peter.
That would be 185 of Third Degree, the podcast. Hi, it's me, Peter, and it's just me and the original. You know him, you love him. Editor, founder of thirddegree.net, Buzz Carrick. Come in, Buzz.
Hi, Peter. We should probably warn everybody that between the World Cup and Dan's wedding, things might get a little crazy in terms of the schedule of getting the podcast recorded and so forth over the next month. But we will be here podcast-wise every week, although we don't cover the World Cup. But you do on all your stuff. You're going to have lots of World Cup content for everybody.
Yeah, I've for the last, all this week, we've been pre-recording all of our preview stuff for the kick-around. And all that's getting posted on our podcast feed, and all that starts going up next week. Andy's done a really good job putting a kind of World Cup for Dummies primer show together. So if you're kind of new to watching the World Cup, which, considering the U.S. hasn't been in it in 8 years, there's actually a whole group of people that have never critically watched the U.S. in a World Cup before.
Yeah.
I think this is a really cool pod to give a listen to. And then we're doing group stage previews, and Laura Sivertson is joining us for all of this. And then when the tournament starts on the 20th, every afternoon we'll record a wrap-up show of that day. And if you don't want to wait for the podcast version, you'll be able to watch it live on the internet, on a video stream while we record it, make mistakes and stuff. So that'll be fun.
That's very cool, yeah. You're braver than me.
And that's all, that's all available on our website, thekickaround.com. Thanks for letting me pimp that, Buzz.
Yeah, cross-promotion. No, it's good content. I can't wait to listen.
Well, thank you, Buzz, for being patient, for waiting for me to help you record this, because I've got all that other stuff going on. But, I came in here to set up, so I popped on the screen and realized that the women were playing right now against Germany, and I turned it on, and game aside, because I'm not really paying attention, all the U.S. is losing. It's the first time I've seen the new World Cup kits in action.
Oh.
And they're dreadful.
Oh, yeah.
It's the white kits, and they are so boring. And even worse for the women, have you seen the logo placement? Because, the new kits have the U.S. crest centered. Well, the giant gold world, when you're the World Cup champion, you get to wear that giant gold badge. It's just like randomly placed off to the right of the U.S. badge. And it just looks so wonky and poorly placed. The whole thing's a disaster. I'm so pissed.
I will make a bold assumption, and I could be totally wrong, that the women will get a new kit of their own that'll roll out before their World Cup so that they don't have that problem. Because clearly this one is for them, unofficially for the men, to me, for this World Cup right now, and that they'll want to give something for the women. I would assume that'll have a better centering, because they'll sell a lot of women's kits prior to that World Cup, I would imagine. So,
well,
it does look terrible. I've seen the pictures.
It looked, and the little red and blue shoulder stripe accent looks really. It all just, I don't know. I don't want to start off. I've already killed Steve Davis right off the bat. I've tuned him out. Steve, come back. Davis, come back. I promise. No more kit talk.
Yeah, I'll text him. Let him know.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate that. All right, so here's where I'd like to start real quick, because we have not spoken since the MLS Cup took place. And I know, Buzz, you haven't watched it yet. You were working that day. You've been very busy with everything else. But I got to tell you, dude, in 27 years of watching this league, that is easily one of the best games of soccer I've ever seen take place. And the fact that it happened in an MLS Cup delights me to no end.
Yeah, almost all the responses that I was seeing on Twitter, I was producing a different sporting event during that time. I kept getting these blow-ups on my phone of, this is the most amazing game I've ever seen. This is the greatest MLS game ever, greatest MLS Cup ever, greatest game in a decade. Just everyone espousing about how great it was. So I fully intend to sit down and watch it at some point, given how great it supposedly is. So it's nice to see. Most MLS championships and most of championships of almost any kind are often not good. So to get one in a final sounds fantastic, and I can't wait to watch it.
Yeah, it starts a little dodgy, but then it starts to find its legs, and then the drama starts, and there's a little bit of everything. Hell, we even have a gruesome leg break takes place in it, and so, and then the poor guy gets his leg broken, and then has to deal with the fact that he also got a red card. So,
wow. I believe that's the official definition of insult to injury. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
It's funny because apparently the video of the leg incident, it was so bad that Fox wouldn't show the replay. But when they wouldn't show the replay, then they could also not show the moment or the explanation as to why the yellow card had been decided to be turned from yellow to red, because it was obvious last man deal, but they couldn't show the replay. So the fact that the ref just magically shows up and starts changing it from yellow to red was kind of interesting, because there was no context to it because of the gruesome leg break. So it was a great game. It makes you, if you're an American fan, it makes you worry about having to play a game against Gareth Bale, because he is the ultimate guy that does that thing that you and I, Dan, talk about a lot, which is having a game changer, a guy that can make special moments out of nothing. He has the lifelong track record of doing that, and now he has to play the United States. So,
and literally at this point, that kind of is all he has left. I mean, we watched him play once or twice this season. I think even maybe it was only one time, a whole game, and he doesn't really have the fitness or the youth to be able to do that for 90 minutes anymore. But what you can do is come in and give you 10 and do something incredible, and that's obviously what he did.
Yeah, he sure did. And when he skies over a 6'6" defender to head in the tying goal with, in double, triple, quadruple injury time, it is bonkers crazy. And the scenes at the stadium are fantastic. Andy was there at the game. He says the stadium's really awesome, and the way it's constructed just holds all the noise. It's nice. It was a great experience. So congratulations to Kellen, and congratulations to Ryan for winning their first MLS Cups. I'm happy for both those dudes.
Yeah, me too. And congrats to Andy for keeping his legendary streak going. I think that is such a cool thing. I mean, I'm very jealous of it myself. Super cool.
It is a good trade. Yeah, for those who don't know, the guy that I co-host the show with, Andy Swift, has been to every single MLS Cup, and he's one of maybe 5 people in the world that can hold that honor. And so he actually met up with some of the fans that make up that 5. He actually had a moment to go visit with them. That was kind of fun, too.
I saw that picture. That was cool, yeah.
All right, well, let's get into other matters that I think the good Third Degree Pod listener care more about, and that is Football Club Dallas and the giant news that you did you break this, Buzz? Or did you? Well, it is the fact that the contract situation between club legend Matt Hedges and the club aren't going very well, or in a kind of weird. It's not like a done deal that Matt's coming back next year. And did you break this story, or did it get? We did.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then why don't you tell us the dealios?
Well, I think it was probably most observers would have assumed that coming into the winter, that whether you pick up Matt Hedges' contract, which should be around $1 million, whether that the option or not was a question mark. And Boggart tweeted, a week ago maybe, he tweeted that the team and Hedges were far apart, and that was the first time we saw some sort of official news about it. And then I heard through my connections later that day, or maybe the next morning, I heard that it was going really, really poorly, and that it wasn't close, like Tom had said, not close. That not only was it not close, it's like the vibe was bad and people were not having ill feelings, was what I had gotten. To add on to that, I didn't have anything original at the time. And then earlier today, I did get something pretty official that he met with Hedges and his people, met with FC Dallas again yesterday. And I don't have any information beyond that other than to say Well, if you're continuing to meet with them, that means you're at least, I would assume, having some level of discussion. And you combine that with the fact that the protected list came out today, and FC Dallas did indeed protect him rather than expose him, because if you expose him and he gets taken, you do get a little bit of money. So the fact that they think enough of these negotiations to protect him for the few more days that they have now, those two things, the meeting yesterday and the protection today, are, I think, positive that people are beginning to think maybe we can find a common ground and he could come back on some number. If they don't get something done and they don't pick up that $1 million option, then next Wednesday, Matt Hedges will be a free agent and can talk to anybody he wants to, including FC Dallas. Anybody who would be interested in signing him will be able to talk to him next Wednesday.
So, this is always a tough situation for a club to be in, and really any sport. This isn't exclusive to soccer, which is the idea that you have to figure out it's balancing being fair to a club legend and treating him right, and also doing what's best for the club.
Yeah, it happens in every sport. I mean, the famous Dallas example from my own fandom is, when Emmitt Smith went to, was it the Cardinals?
Yeah.
He went to, and you can remember various people that have been big figures for any franchise you're a fan of making a late run at another club for a season or two. It's happened to, I remember Joe Montana going somewhere else. Treywin didn't do it. He just quit. But, it's a common thing. And the question becomes, in this case, given Hedges' age and the amount of that contract, and the fact that most of us would felt that center back, both of them, in fact, is a position that you might think could be better. So, to keep escalating Hedges' contract when he's going on from 32 to 33, that is not necessarily something that in a brutal offensive contract roster building sense you want to do. Now, Hedges as a club legend, should he get a little value on the end? I mean, you can make that case. But the bottom line is they have till Monday to pick up the option or not. And then till Wednesday, when he becomes a complete and total open free agent, and then anyone can talk to him. So they have 5 days left to try and get something done before he will skedaddle. And given the amount of people that are looking at Aaron Long and are interested in Aaron Long, when Aaron Long goes to one of them, then the other 3 or 4 or 5 people that could use a center back are going to immediately start looking down the list of who's the next center backs available. And that's when your Matt Hedges' name is going to come up. I'm not talking about how someone listening might personally evaluate those two players. This is sort of the hierarchy that's getting talked about among clubs. The clubs are queuing up to sign Aaron Long. When they don't get him, whoever doesn't get him, then you may need Hedges, or you may want to look at like Houston didn't protect Tim Parker today. Various kinds of players are possibly available that you can move on. But for the bottom line for Dallas is, I think at this point, it's clear that they would like Hedges back at a lesser number. Maybe it's time to transition to Nkosi, but it still would be nice to have Hedges here, man. Good leader. No one plays 34 games, really. You want to mix them in. You want to be able to go 3 backs. You've already got rid of 1 back. You're not sure they're center back. You're not even sure they're bringing back Quinones, so you might need 2 more center backs anyway. So if they can get a good number done, I think it'd be beneficial, even if Hedges is not going to be the guy. Even if they go out and do like a Tam Gam kind of signing, still be nice to have Hedges here if you can find a number that works.
All right. Well, I was going to ask you, you'd done your reporting on it, and I was going to ask you for your opinion, but I think you stated. But just be more clear about what you really want them to do.
What I would like them to do would be work out this middle ground number. If they would have said, I think declining him and letting him walk away is a bad idea. If they would say, I want him on $1 million, I would have said, okay, that's fine for 1 more season. But really, it'll benefit everybody, the club, and I think Hedges too, if you can come to sort of some agreement about the future and work something out so that you could have him for a year or 2 in the future, or maybe even as a coach in the future. This is a relationship you don't want to burn down. As a guy transitions into not being the full-time starter, he can still have immense value. Now, as the contract goes up and up, 1 million, 1.1 million, that on a surface, that becomes a problem. But you have to look also at the market for center backs. Market for center backs is very thin right now. It may be that in the open market, he may command more than that. You don't want to let a guy like this find that out because if it turns out he is, then you're in trouble, and you have to make a brutal decision about, okay, is it worth it? Am I ready to go to Nicosia full time? Do I have something else out there I think I can sign? So the best move for both, as a pure person that observes this franchise, the thing that helps Hedges and FC Dallas together is to find a number in between. And that's what I would like to have happen. I also totally get it if Hedges is like, no, forget you. And I do think it's a bad idea to let him walk away completely without anything. I think that's bad because then you are stuck with just Nicosia and Martinez and a crapshoot in the market. And when you just finished third in the West, you'd like to take a step forward, and that would mean taking a step back probably. The odds are bad that you would hit on everything again like they did last year. You can't count on that. So that middle ground's what I want, and hopefully they can get it.
We haven't even started talking about 2023 yet, and I hadn't even put too much thought into the fact that Hedges may or may not be here, or what a future with or without Hedges or all of that looks like. And so my head is spinning on the whole concept at this point. Ultimately, I want to whatever works out best for Matt, to be honest, because he's been such a good steward to the club and so forth. So if that means he feels like he wants to get his biggest dollar deal and he has to go to, I don't know, Vancouver to do it, then I suppose that's probably the best thing to happen. But it will be really weird to see Matt Hedges play in another MLS shirt that is not Dallas colors.
It totally will be, but when you're talking about a 33, he'll be 33 in, April, I think. And you have to look at the performance of the last 2 years when it's clear that he is starting to lose a step or two. He's not what he was 3 years ago. And the amount of time he's missed for injuries has gone up a little bit. That also is a symptom of age. You don't recover quite as fast. Your body needs more time off. It doesn't heal itself as quickly. Everything hurts a little bit more. It's just a byproduct of age. Granted, center back's a position where your mind can carry you further. That's probably true of Hedges. He could probably play a little bit longer than most guys. But if you're looking at a 1 or 2 year deal, you're looking at him turning 35 in the second season of that. Man, that's a big ask. There's only 1 or 2 players in the world that have played deeper into their 30s even as a center back. So the clock is ticking for sure. I definitely agree with you that there should be some honoring of his time here, and that may be why they're talking to him at all. I mean, if he wasn't Matt Hedges, I'm sure it would just be over at this point.
Well, it all stinks because this is always the hardest part of being a fan of a player and a club and so forth. So I guess we'll all pay attention to that. Now, the expansion draft list of players protected and exposed has also been revealed for Dallas. And I'm assuming all clubs have done it by now, correct?
Yeah, the whole league announced them around noon today.
Okay, so that all came out, and why don't you run through the big headlines of that as well, please, sir?
Yeah, the big headline, we only care about FC Dallas on this podcast. The big headline, of course, is that they protected Hedges, which again comes back to the idea that they feel like there's something there in the negotiations. The other big headline was, as a complete surprise to me, Marco Farfan's homegrown rights, unbelievably, have now transferred all the way to FC Dallas, which is crazy to me because I know that you trade for them usually individually, but yet his came along in the sense of protection for the expansion draft. So that was a free player that no one was expecting. That meant you had room to protect a whole bunch of guys you were happy about, and you only ended up having to expose 6 players. Now, one of them was Lucas Bartlett, who's the center back this last year they drafted that everybody was like, oh, gosh, he's already 50. Nicky Hernandez, who's been on loan to San Antonio.
Done that guy so wrong.
I know we have. I know. But,
no, you, not me.
Yeah.
You.
I did. I know I'm awful. Nicky Hernandez, who did the work and went on the loan. I like what he did there. That was good, but you only have so much room, and he's a low-risk pick. Frank O'Hara, no one's picking that guy for $3 million. That's an easy one. Nanu and Quinones, who's both of whom their loans are running out. So if anybody wants them, you can draft them, but then you have to buy them. So no one's going to do that. So those guys are safe to expose. The one that people went back and forth on was Facundo Quignon was exposed. And some people are like, well, that's risky. Well, it's not really because he's going on 29 now. He's got an $800,000 contract, which is a DP contract. You have to buy it down, right? Also, he's not so far beating out a 22-year-old homegrown. Now, there are people that like Facu a little better than Edwin. I like Edwin a little better, but the bottom line is that there's a conversation there. Well, that's not very good when Edwin's on 130 or whatever he's on, and Facundo's on 800K. So that's an easy not protect. Even though St. Louis has traded for more international spots, the odds of them picking him are very, very low. And if they do, that's a replaceable player. And honestly, it would be doing Dallas a favor clearing 800K off the cap. I mean, that's a DP level cap number. So you don't hate that idea if they do take him. On the upside, they were able to protect Jimmy Maurer. That's always good. Not a vital player anymore with Martin Paz, but Martin might get hurt somewhere, and Jimmy's a quality keeper, and more importantly, a great leader, great locker room guy, great teacher. Love having him protected. And everybody else was, as you expected, Areola, Kamungo, Leggett, Martinez, Nesebling, Obrian, Paz, Tafari, Tuamasi, and Velasco. The no-brainers all got protected. So
they protected Obrian?
Yeah, well, so I know that some people don't like him very much, but last year he had, or combined, he has like 11 goals and 8 assists on like 300K. That's okay. You're not looking at him as, is he a starter, but that's a decent value of goals and assists per dollar, regardless of whether you like his style or not. That's a solid piece. And you can look at the guys they exposed, because the thing is for Dallas is because they have so many homegrowns, they get to protect like automatically like 15 guys that nobody else did. So they have one of the smallest exposed lists in the whole league, and there's only 6 dudes. I mean, who would you have covered up instead of Obrian? Facundo, I guess. I mean, but no one's going to pick Facundo because of his contract size. Yeah. But Obrian's decent goals and assist combination for honestly a relatively low cap hit. So, I get that there's things about his game we don't love, but he's not longer a starter here. It's just it's a good piece.
The only reason why I ask is because of his quality. Would somebody else like him, which would then allow Dallas to go out and find a better player for that position and usage versus Obrian? But to your point, he's only on $300,000, and he did produce something, so maybe that's better than they think they can go out and do for the same amount of money.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is like inside the league, that kind of production is going to be very difficult to find domestically. So you'd be looking at outside the league. Well, a known commodity is almost always better than an unknown commodity, because for that same kind of dollar value, you're looking at a same sort of similar caliber player. You're looking at mid-tier Colombia or Ecuador or something. You don't know what you're going to get. So almost always known value over unknown value is a win when you're trying to make your team better,
Okay, well, that's all out there, and you've given us all the dates so we know what's going on, and everybody can pay attention or follow you on Twitter or however you're disseminating the information that happens over the course of the next 2 weeks.
Well, yeah, roughly. There's, next week has the deadline for picking up options. It has the free agency window. It has the silly reentry drafts that nobody really cares very much about. Those things are always crazy to me. And then you're going to get into the World Cup. So there'll probably be a pause a little bit on player moves in terms of like that tier of player. But the free agency window is going to be open, and pretty soon you're going to get to the international windows. And if you wait to the window to actually open before you get your deals done, it's too late. So this is the time when Dallas behind the scenes should be going crazy trying to get guys, and make it happen. Because if you wait till actual January, then you're hosed, and I'm sure they will be in the market for some stuff.
Okay. All right. Well, the other thing that's happened in the last 24 hours that is worth talking here is the fact that Berhalter has announced his roster for the U.S. men's national team as they travel to Qatar for the World Cup, which begins for the United States on Monday the 21st. Yes, the Monday the 21st, which is just 11 days away. They are going to be in a World Cup, and they're not even together 11 days out. It's nuts. Actually, some of the team has been together, but not everybody's been together.
Yeah, I like just in the middle of this women's game that my lovely wife was watching, they had the video of the guys getting off the plane in Qatar, and I was like, wait, what? And then it hit me like, oh my gosh, they're already there. It's
Oh,
like they
they-
got to go.
Oh, the U.S. teams arrived in Qatar already?
Yeah, they showed a clip of them getting off the plane. At least I think that's what it was. I was looking over her shoulder, but
Oh, I didn't.
they were like, they're here, they're getting off the plane, we're ready to go. I mean, you're right. It's 11 days away. Why would they not be there?
Wait, hold on a second. That can't be right because there are Premier League games this weekend.
Well, it may be missing those guys, but everybody else, could be there.
Hold on. Yeah, there's a whole. I'm sure Pulisic's got a game this weekend, and
Well, it may not be the whole team.
Adams and. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I'm surprised they don't. I guess they'll travel over there, whoever's available, and then wait for the rest of them to show up. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so the roster was announced, and look, I'm gonna say it. This is very shocking because while Dallas still has a significant presence in the roster, it got reduced quite a bit, and none of it was bigger than the news that Ricardo Pepi was not named to the roster. Neither was Reggie Cannon, and maybe equally as surprising as Ricardo was the fact that Paul Arriola was not announced as part of the traveling team. Jesus is still in.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah, I think the big shocker one is Ricardo Pepi. I mean, obviously from the people that have spoken to his people, they were sort of blindsided in a lot of way and are really pissed about it. I mean, on the other side of the coin, he's still young enough to play in the U20 World Cup, I guess, instead. But I find that really shocking. I felt like that Pepi, over the course of the qualifiers, had really sort of played himself into a position of security. And then Berhalter said that basically it was him or Jesus for one spot effectively. And I thought, boy, that's crazy. And certainly we knew Jesus had played well enough that he got himself into that contention and was basically the go-to starter. But then Berhalter's talk that Haji Wright was going up against PFOC for like that last spot, and that Pepi wasn't even in that combo. And I thought, boy, I don't understand that at all. I mean, I know Wright's been hot. I get that idea, but there seems to be, from where I was sitting, it seemed to be a little bit of like there's some pretty harsh reaction based off those last two friendlies. That he kind of was like, man, these guys I'm getting rid of these bums. Based on a couple of games were late, and I thought, well, that just seems.
Yeah, I think to me, Pepe's had a really hard time getting connected to the team in his late performances. I mean, there just has been very little to really enjoy about Pepe's performances, but as we all know, he's a guy that needs service, and they didn't seem to be able to get him service, and he's not a guy that's going to create for himself any of these opportunities. I agree with you. I thought the conversation about how it was between PFOC and Wright, and then on the other part of it, it was between Jesus, Josh Sargent, and Pepi, three guys for two slots, and Pepi was the odd man out. And and to me, honestly, Buzz, that almost sounds like he's making something up to justify the decision, because if you throw Pepi, I guess you could say you could throw Pepi in the other group of guys. Well, he's been scoring of late as a similar rate of those guys. So, because here's the weirdest part of all of this. The guy out of all of them, of all 5 or 6, I guess it's 5 guys, the one who's in the worst form is Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, the last couple of games were not good for him, but
it was longer than just a couple of games. I mean, the guy hasn't scored since early September. So and maybe that would have been the biggest shock of all if Ferreira hadn't been picked to go based on form. So all of it just seems very weird and confusing, and I'm certainly for all the obvious reasons disappointed for Ricardo.
Yeah,
but he is a kid; he'll go to a World Cup.
Yeah, I have 3 things about this whole forward thing that sort of I wanted to talk about. One is that I think you can't undersell that Jesus is very different than the rest of those guys, and both Greg and Nico, if you can go all the way back to Lucci, they all talk about all the incredible stuff that Jesus does off the ball, like his movement, his line breaking. He does all these modern things that those guys all love that none of the rest of those guys do. Pepi doesn't do it. Wright doesn't do it. Haji doesn't do it. Sargent doesn't do it. Sargent, you can use a wing. He can do that, but he doesn't do this come back to midfield, false 9 space creation, because the United States' team keys on wings. It keys on your Pulisic and your Gio Reyna and your Aronson and your Weah, right? It keys off of their movement off of a 9. And Jesus' best plays that style for you. So that's number one. Number two, do you remember at the 2019 World Cup when Berhalter picked Zardes and Altidore, and I was absolutely livid that he didn't take Sargent when they were talking about, even Berhalter was talking about Sargent's the future of the national team. And there were people on Twitter that blasted me. Well, you guys can all STF up right now because I was 100% right that you should have taken Sargent and not Altidore or Zardes. Or the Tyler Boyd was the other forward on that team. And lastly, Berhalter said that Haji Wright's league was better than the one Pepi was playing in. And I know Turkey's a tough environment, but man, that's just, that's where he's playing, right? Wright is in Turkey for somebody. It's like, I don't know. I get lost in sometimes some of this minutia of these coaching decisions where I'm not sure I really believe everything they're telling me. When they, like you said, they came up for a reason, like to explain it, why he went with just his gut. Just tell me you went with your gut, man. Just tell me, like, I wanted Wright's over the top, whatever, for in some gut late games. Okay, that I can buy. Just tell me that. Don't try and tell me that, Pepi's 5 goals and 2 assists in 7 games wasn't of par. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Well, the other one that we have to feel really bad for because he had been there through thick and thin is Paul Arriola. And the real gutter of this was the explanation as to why he was the odd man out. And that was because all the other wingers are now healthy.
Yeah.
And he's the guy that's been filling in all the holes when Gio Reyna or Pulisic or Tim Weah or whoever have been hurt. And for Paul to have, fought through and been there for the team the entire time, not to get called up, but you also understand that there's only so many slots. Yeah. And he posted something really nice last night, and it made me think even more of the world of him. I feel terrible for him, but this is the dirty business of World Cup rosters.
He's such a good leader, but in this one, Berhalter is correct. If you look at Weah being healthy, you look at Aronson being healthy, you look at Reyna being healthy, all of a sudden, all these high caliber, particularly right-sided, more than left wings, are healthy. And if you go to the left side, then you got your more Pulisic and your Jordan Morris. So now I tend to think that all wings are interchangeable. And I actually think that because you can go on different foots and that kind of stuff. And if you watch the way FC Dallas plays, which again is exactly like the national team, we see the wings here in Dallas flip-flop all the time. And if you remember about a month ago, I think Paul figured out the writing was on the wall because right about that time, there was a little run where Velasco wasn't available. And Paul talked about how excited he was to get to go play on the left side with Obrand on the right because Paul was like, I want to remind people that I can play well on the left as well. And I honestly think that he realized that because Morris had come back into camp and was, and all these guys were coming back into camp, he probably was like, man, I better show that I can do this. And I thought did pretty well on the left side here. I think he's perfectly capable of doing it on the left side for as a wing, but so are any of those guys. There's a real interchangeability in wings in the modern game. They don't play the line and run a wide line and like get to the end and cross. None of them do that. They're slashing and attacking, Messi style, slashing that gap, the modern attacking inside wing, if you will. So, totally got it for Paul. He's such a leader. He would have been so good in the locker room. I mean, the chances he would have gotten in a game are small, but I did have the thought that there actually is a benefit to him that he won't want to think about this now. But, usually the World Cup's in the summer and those European guys play a season, they go right to the World Cup and then they go right into a season. That second season, they all start to break down. And this World Cup will be like that for the American MLS player. You'll go straight out of a season into a World Cup, straight into a season. And so next year, the MLS guys that are in this World Cup team will really be hurting through that season in terms of their physicality and being prone to injuries. And now Paul, who occasionally has had injury problems, should not have that to happen to him, won't have that overload. So for Paul, maybe that would be my suggestion is try and embrace the fact that you'll be really healthy going into next season. Cross your fingers, knock on wood. But that's the one tiny silver lining of what is a horrible situation for the dude.
The other conversation to have is something that we've talked about on this podcast a lot, especially back at the time they left the club as part of sales, is the scenario in which Ricardo Pepi and Reggie Cannon stayed in Dallas with their careers instead of going out. Maybe even Bryan Reynolds, this applies to some degree. Instead of plying their trade in Europe and signing a big deal, if they had stayed in Dallas and were getting regular playing time, would they have been on this roster?
Yeah, to be more specific, it's something that we talk about all the time when players go to Europe. We always say, man, don't just pay attention to the money or the name. Pay attention to the scenario. Am I going to play? What kind of team is it? Like when Pepi went to Augsburg, what did we talk about all the time? Lack of service. I said, it's going to kill that kid if he doesn't get the ball. And that's what happened. What did we talk about? You were adamant with Bryan Reynolds. He should be going to Bruges, right? Yep. How many times? Think about that. If Bryan Reynolds had been here, if Reggie was gone already, and Bryan Reynolds would have stayed here and played a whole season like he did the last season he was here, or if he gone to Bruges and crushed it like he would have at Bruges, like he's doing now, would Bryan Reynolds be in this World Cup team?
Well, I'll go one more.
Yeah.
If Justin Che had stayed in Dallas and was playing center back and had been good enough to fight and win a center back battle with this current center back issue that Berhalter has, and he was playing week in and week out in MLS, is there even a chance that Justin Che would have ended up getting a slot because of the injury situation?
Yeah, you remember they brought him in a national team camp when they were doing that camp over in Europe. You know, it's always about playing. Right? If you go somewhere, and this is why I always say, like, you can't go where the place the owner wanted you. You have to go where the coach wanted you. Because if the coach, like what happened to Bryan, is the coach, they had told him he was going to be the guy in that second season, and then they fired their coach and went with Moreno, and he was screwed. Right? So it's like if the coach has to want you, the playing time has to be there. In Pepi's case, it's got to be the right kind of playing time where they're going to get you the ball. You know, different players are different and require different scenarios. And if Pepi would have stayed here and been the starter, would he have had 18 goals? And would Jesus be playing as a midfielder and not be in the World Cup and Pepi would be? I mean, you can easily see that. I mean, it's granted, it's hindsight 2020. We can all say that, but this is how you analyze the moves that you've made and how you learn from it. And I think there's no question that if Reggie had stayed here, or if Pepi would have stayed here, they would and played. And poor Reggie's in a team where he's playing, but he's not playing in a right back. He's playing as a right center back in a back three, right? And maybe that league's not perceived, as Berhalter said, Turkey was better than where Pepi is. Maybe they don't look at Portugal if you're not at Porto or Sporting or something. Maybe that's not so great. So you have to be really careful when you make these moves. You know, I think you could even look at like a Busio and Tanner Tessman down there at. And now dropping into the Serie B, you know, those guys fell out of any national team pool or maybe fell out of the U23s, you know, and they're both quality players, but, you know, not getting the play time, not playing at the right level. It matters.
Yeah, and it especially hurts that the guy that took Reggie's spot is a kid that came back to MLS and got his regular playing time as a right back and a back four.
Yeah.
So
and a guy we like because he played it for the academy for like 5 minutes. So we do like him, but Shaq more.
Does Dallas get any claim on him at all whatsoever?
I mean, it wasn't even a complete and full year. I mean, when he came to FC Dallas, it was from a non-MLS academy to FC Dallas, and he did it just to get publicity and to get himself to Europe. FC Dallas knew that, but they needed a right back with the 19s at the time, and they were like, let's get a relationship with the guy. Let's get him established. Maybe, who knows, maybe it works out that he comes back here someday. That kind of, everybody did everybody a favor. So he was here for about 8 months, maybe like 2/3 of a season, you know, so whatever, I'll claim him.
You know, all the social media noise about the roster announcement yesterday, I find entertaining and delightful because it really establishes us as a true soccer-loving, football-loving country. Yeah. When you see that kind of battle going on, and you and I have been through so many World Cup cycles, there is no question. I mean, other than the one incident with Klinsmann and Landon Donovan, the amount of noise that we hear every cycle about the U.S. roster is pretty minimal until now, and now it's like full tilt fire. And I personally, other than the fact that some of these guys are related to Dallas, and that's the only reason why I care, at the end of it, I'm not too plussed about all of this because everybody's arguing about, by and large, aren't should not have an impact on the U.S.'s performance in the tournament. They're all fringe players at this point. I mean, if we're really worried about Paul Areola or Jordan Morris, then the U.S. has a lot more problems in the World Cup ahead of them than we realize.
I said that to a friend of mine. I said, if these are the dudes that were 24, 25, 26, they wouldn't be on the roster ordinarily anyway. And if any of them are playing, we have a problem.
Yeah.
The one that obviously is already a problem is the loss of Richards, and now Ream has come in. And for a guy, I know he's having a great season, whether you like him over Aaron Long or not, whatever, he hasn't been in the mix. So that's clearly an emergency grab. And the fact that we have to have a discussion between Ream and Long, to me, is a big problem in terms of our ability to actually be competitive in this cup. That should be the Richards, or it should have been somebody like McKenzie, who hasn't progressed like everybody had wanted, or Miazga, who didn't progress like Carter Vickers did. So there's some gaps there at center back still. That's an issue beyond, Zimmerman. Some people lose their mind that, oh my God, our best center back's an MLS guy. I mean, he is, so there's a question there.
I also want to give platitudes and congratulation and honor to a Twitter account by name of a guy, Michael Milberger. Now, I doubt he listens to this podcast. I don't care, but he had the best and funniest tweet out of all of this, which was, quote, "Kudos to Sebastian Berhalter for showing great restraint today by not shit-talking the players that were cut from the roster today." Clapping emoji. And I hope you understand that joke. It is a super, super awesome joke if you understand the context of it as it relates to a previous announcement many, many years ago. All right, well, the U.S., as I said, kicks off their campaign in a mere 11 days. I can't believe it's almost here. And they're going to, you know what the crazy part is? Let's just say some of those guys are still traveling. How many of those guys are going to end up chewing up an entire day of the remaining 10 days just getting to Qatar? Oh,
man, that cannot be an easy. I mean, I've never been there, but I cannot imagine that's a simple travel scenario.
It's got to be like a 23-hour flight one way, or 20-something hour set of flights or something. It can't be short. No
I mean, maybe not bad. Maybe not that bad if you're in Turkey, but if you're in England or something like that, it's not going to be simple.
Yeah, the other news that came out today, Dallas Cup announced that Arsenal, first place Premier League club Arsenal, will be sending a U19 or whatever it is to the Supergroup participation in the next Dallas Cup. Dallas Cup is the greatest thing ever, and luckily I feel like the 2023 edition will really start to get it back on track post-COVID. And I'm hearing rumors that the referee program may pick up again this year, and I may get another homestay. So
that's terrific. I thought it was funny that they put in the press release to remind us that the last time Arsenal was here in 2019, that Giannis Musa was in that team, and that he was like a big engine of their side. So like all of us saw him at the Cotton Bowl, like on the opener against, I can't remember who they played at the Cotton Bowl that opening day, but they were in the Supergroup, and FC Dallas' team was in that Supergroup. So
I had totally forgotten about that. He was with Arsenal back then. That's right.
Yeah, there was a couple of good dudes in that team, but he was the one that has the American connection to us that we all, we're like, oh my gosh, that happens all the time. Like they all the time tweet out guys that are playing in the Champions League or playing in the World Cup. They're like, yeah, that dude was here this year. That dude was. I mean, Beckham was here when he was a kid. The Supergroup is the one where. Who's the Manchester United kid that has the big, huge fro that came out a couple of years ago? He can't remember. He came over here.
Hannibal?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's who it was. It was maybe a few years before. It was maybe like 2017, 2018. But like without fail.
Oh, Chong. You're thinking of Chong.
Chong. Yeah. Without fail, there's guys in the Supergroup that within a year or two, you'll see in the Champions League or the World Cup, it's just a massive, massive stage. And you get to see them when they're 18 years old, right on the cusp of being these massive multi-million-dollar players and getting first look at guys. And it's fun to talk to people about like, oh, what's that guy worth? What's that guy? Who's this? Who's that? The European dudes will tell you because they know a little bit more about their youth clubs coming up. But Arsenal's a great youth club. I mean, they've won a bunch of titles and a bunch of youth FA Cups. They're always really good. Even though Steve Barrow doesn't work for them anymore, but I can't wait to get Arsenal back as the first commit for the Supergroup. Super awesome. That people will now pay more attention. They needed a little something from after last year's Supergroup was not that great, so I love it. I'm excited.
All right. Anything else we need to cover in this episode of Third Degree, the podcast?
Well, the only thing I really wanted to do was give my 2019 Gold Cup Josh Sargent hot fire thrown out there. But just right around the corner for FC Dallas, that we'll start to, once we get through the deadline for picking up options, then we can really dig into the plan for next season. All the signs are pointing to the kid Jose Malato, who's the North Texas player that was on loan from Deportivo Cali. He's the one in the Bayern Munich world team thing. Do you remember the player I'm talking about? Yeah. Well, North Texas put out their official contract moves. They didn't even mention him. They mentioned the other guys that were on loan that they didn't pick up. Not a single word about that dude, which to me just reinforces that the report that he's been bought by Dallas actually happened, as we've been saying that it happened. You know what I'm talking about? They won't admit it yet, but the fact that they didn't even mention him like he was a ghost was telling.
Yeah.
And then I understand Blaine Ferry's going with somebody in the USL Championship that he parted amicably, but they were like, they kind of wanted to bring him back, but he couldn't. There was no room at FC Dallas, so it's like, okay, kid, good luck to you. And so I think he's landed in the championship.
And I'm sorry, Buzz. Did you mention that Dallas traded for the DP or the international slot with Nashville?
I did not mention it, but yeah, they did again. So they're back up to 9. Last year they had 10. They always like to do this. Nashville just traded away 4 of them now. What a weird build that team is, that they don't need them at all, that they have 4 extra ones laying around. And it's funny how they got different money values for each of them, that they, just depending on how negotiations went, they didn't tell what they were paying. Like St. Louis paid $200,000 instead of $175,000 that Dallas paid, and somebody else paid $175,000 at a pick. So maybe the more they'd handed out, the more that they were getting. For like, oh, this is like the 3rd or 4th one we're sending out. You got to give us more. But they ended up landing like $700,000 in GAM and TAM and stuff, which is like a DP basically, if you want. And they traded for Fafa Pico, so they're all about the domestic. Nashville is, and they exposed Dax McCarty. Never exposed Dax McCarty in the.
Oh,
that's a
man.
big mistake.
That is good. They are good. I was going to say they don't need any international slots because they have Dax McCarty. He's so good, and now they've let him. He'll go somewhere else. That's terrible.
Did you know he's 35?
Yeah,
Can
I know.
you believe that?
And he looks like he's 15.
I know.
Still,
he was a baby. Oh, he was 18 when he came out of Carolina. He's so young.
Yeah, crazy. All right. Well, very good. I think we've done this a succinct, nice job today, Buzz.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty tight. Dan's not here clogging up that. No, Dan's wedding is this weekend, so everyone.
Yeah, Dan's going to get betrothed this weekend.
Nuptials, and you're out next week, and Dan might be on a honeymoon, so. Man, it might be tough.
You may have to do Buzz solo talking to himself pods, which are great. Yes, I'm unfortunately going to be persona non grata here for a while because I've got to start doing all the World Cup stuff moving forward. So, for those who don't like me on the pod, this is your time. Your time has arrived.
There's not anyone like that. Listen, as soon as you listen to me and Dan do it by ourselves, or me do it by myself, then you instantly understand why you're here.
It's charming. I love it.
Yeah. Well, given those 2 scenarios, I'm assuming Dan's not going to be back. I didn't even ask him. It's looking like it's a Buzz Q&A with myself.
He'll be very busy consummating his marriage and does not have time for you, sir.
No, he does not. But, thankfully, FC Dallas will finally do some roster moves, and we'll have free agency will have begun, and maybe we'll have a Hedges answer by then, and then people can start to fire away with questions about 2023, and we can really dig into roster building and get long-winded about stupid Dallas minutia in the middle of the World Cup. And we'll talk about whatever happens in the World Cup teams.
Very good.
Hey, it's Buzz reminding you that Third Degree, the podcast, is brought to you by Soccer90.com. The U.S. men's national team is out. The team is on the ground in Qatar. The gear is available. Get all your stuff at Soccer90.com. Shop the whole selection of U.S. men's national team stuff. Support the boys as they go for it in the group stage, hopefully deep into the tournament. And don't miss the end of MLS season sale, which is now through November 13th. MLS and FC Dallas gear marked down by as much as 50%. 50%, I mean, that's more than our discount. Shop Soccer90 today.
Well, thank you, sir. Thanks for waiting for me to make myself available to do this. I appreciate you accommodating me.
You're welcome, and I'm really glad you were here today. Thank you.
All right, my pleasure, as always. Thank you, FC Dallas Curious fan. Somebody, I don't know who, will be here next week to talk to you on another episode of Third Degree, the podcast. Congratulations, Mrs. Dan.
Dan, come back.
Woo! Woo! Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree Net Podcast. 25 long hard years, yeah. Was Carrick, yeah, the man. 25 years, you better be giving this man at least $5 a month. Patreon Third Degree, come on, pay the man. It's the only comprehensive coverage of my fucking club that I love so much. Hey, come on, it's Third Degree or bust. Yes, give the man some money. Hey, Third Degree Net Podcast.